Hey there, it's Heather Smith here with BarrelRacingTips.com. I'm here this morning again with another episode of Pistols Progress. So we just finished our morning therapy and we're going to get stretched and booted up here in just a moment and get started on what will be officially his fourth session. So you may already know that we're actually starting with a month of groundwork just to help strengthen his body and gradually get him back in shape after he's been off for, well, really since last summer, since a hoof injury in late September. And so anyway, this morning I wanted to talk about front-endy horses, which Pistol, I would say, falls into that category. And there's so much we can do outside of drills and exercises when we're riding to actually make some shifts in their habits and their movement patterns so that when it does come time to run barrels, that they just are not as likely to carry their weight with excess on the front end. So there are 3 tips I was going to give you for doing that in just the little everyday habits that you have just when you're catching your horse, when you're leading them from point A to point B, and so forth. And so I've already took a couple of clips and I'm going to put together a little video demonstrating a couple of these things. But one of the things that I do, I especially notice like when I'm leading my horse through gates and so forth, that if you really watch how horses use their feet, for example, when I lead Pistol through a gate, he'll follow me, and then when we go to turn around, he will rotate right around on his front end. And so that's just kind of a habit he's developed. He's a little on high alert. There was a garbage truck that went by this morning and the neighbors are running around in their pastures and stuff like that. So anyway, he just did some major licking and chewing and processing a few minutes ago after we got done with therapy, but he's a little, I can see a little wide-eyed right now. But anyway, so when I'm really conscious of just when I'm leading him around and leading him through gates, when I'm catching him, like everywhere I ask him to go and how I ask him to move, I'll lead him forward and then I'll actually ask him to rock his weight backward. Instead, I'll interrupt that pattern of him turning, overweighting his front end and then rotating his hind end around. And you know, horses get better at what they practice. And so our horses, you know, they develop habits and then it's just like us, it becomes like muscle memory and something they just sort of default to. And by interrupting these little patterns at every single opportunity that we can actually, or another thing I do is like when I'm leading my horse from point A to point B, instead of just leading them, I will actually turn them around and back them. Like when we go from the barn here over to the arena, I'll actually ask him to back the entire distance. Or sometimes when I get finished in the arena, I'll ask him to back from wherever we're at to the gate and so forth. And this is just another way to shift that weight rearward and shift it back and shift it back and shift it back so that they become more accustomed and more used to just carrying their weight in that way on a regular basis. He's so funny. I love watching his expressions. The other horses are leaving and so he's on like high alert again. So anyway, another thing that I do, and this applies whether we're riding or on the ground, is I do a lot of transitions, which again require the horse to downshift and shift their weight backward. So the more time they spend with that weight balance where they want it, the more that becomes familiar to them. And the more often they're asked to go there, and they're asked to go there like repeatedly, the more often they're just going to stay there. And so again, our horses learn, you know, like what they practice. And so we want to make sure that at every single opportunity we're rehearsing the things that we want. And everything's connected. You know, how we do some things is how we do other things. How they turn around when you lead them through a gate is likely going to be mimicked in how they turn around a barrel. So again, I'm really conscious of not letting them get front-endy just in my general moving around day to day on the ground, moving them from point A to point B. I'll take every opportunity I can to back them wherever I can. And then I'll do lots and lots of transitions. And again, like I mentioned in my last video, it's really critical that you have a super refined level of education. So if they're getting too forward and too front-endy, that you can just like in an instant ask them to shift back. It's almost like you have a bubble of space between you, like you have communication between you and your horse even when there's float or there's slack in the line. And so I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to mention. I'll invite you, if you have front-endy horses, or if you have one now, or if you've ever had one, what are some tips that you would share that have been effective for you? And again, like I said, this month in particular, I'm working on conditioning him and doing some therapeutic groundwork to really get him prepared and strong and sound for what we have ahead of us. And next month I'll start riding him, but it's a great opportunity to get established all the habits and the ways of moving and the biomechanics that are really going to pay off that we need to have in a run. Oh, the other tip I was going to say, something to think about for those of you who are actually doing a lot of riding right now or may have a front-endy horse, is that the more I watch and really learn from horses who have similar styles to Pistol here, like Haley Kinsel's sister, for example, they tend to be kind of stiff. They're not real round and bendy, and they tend to just like really pull on their front end. And it's not necessarily the style that I personally like. I don't necessarily think it's the most beautiful, and I think we kind of have to meet in the middle. I think that our horses, we do need to work on getting our horses engaged and utilizing their hindquarters. But at the same time, we've kind of got to, like I said, meet them in the middle and work with what God gave them. And I think one of the ways we can do that with a front-endy horse is by making absolutely sure that they are mentally engaged and hooked and responsible for their job on the barrel pattern. And then that way we can ride them with less hand and just subtly guide them and just allow them to be, they're going to be a little bit stiff or a little bit front-endy, more than maybe we want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we still can't be incredibly fast with that style. But here's the thing, is that if they're not hooked and we feel like we have to override them and use too much hand, then a horse with that particular style is really going to tend to disengage them, and their hindquarters will just rotate to the outside even more. So that's something to think about. And I was going to mention that in my book, the next 50 barrel racing exercises for precision on the pattern, I've got several groundwork exercises, and then I also have some for really getting our horses mentally engaged on the pattern also. So that would be something worth checking into, so that you can go even deeper and kind of take these ideas that I'm sharing and really put them into action. So I hope that helps. Like I said, I took a couple clips a minute ago. I'm going to take a couple more right now, and I'm going to put together an actual video of us demonstrating a couple of these things I mentioned, and I plan to post that a little bit later today. So, good morning, Charla. I'm zooming in here on the camera. Yes, good night from Australia. Yes. So, yeah, Karen has a horse that's heavy on the front end too. So the other thing I was going to mention about these horses who tend to be heavy on the front end is that if you're going to do all this encouraging them to rock back on the hindquarters and rock back on the hindquarters, make absolutely sure that they're not sore in the hind end, because sometimes that can be a reason that they're front-endy to begin with. Like they don't want to get and crouch down and use their hind end because it's uncomfortable for them. So if we just do tons and tons of backing and we get really ambitious about that, and if we like go overboard with it and overdo it, we could make the issue even worse actually, because we'll just make them even more sore in the hind end by overdoing all that backing and so forth. So that's something to keep in mind, is absolutely ruling out any soreness in the hind end or any reason they have for not wanting to really engage and use themselves correctly. So Couple more comments. You're so welcome, Matt and Krista. Krista, that would be a good question to email me on. So go to barrelracingtips.com and down to the contact link down in the bottom navigation menu, and then also keep Q&A Tuesday in mind also. So love having you guys tuning in with me, and we're gonna get stretched, we're gonna get booted up, and we're gonna get to work this morning. So I'll post a little bit of clips from this morning a little bit later today. So thank you again so much for joining me. I hope you enjoy these tips for getting your front-endy horses more engaged and using their hindquarters. So until next time, take care.